Have we really reached the point where people cry to their laptops and call that therapy? Everywhere I look, people are saying, I don't need a therapist, I have ChatGPT. Okay, so you've replaced your best friend, your mom, your priest, your analyst with autocomplete. Great. Text a robot instead of a human. It's cheaper, faster, and never tired. There's been a boom in AI-driven therapy chatbots, from mental health apps to everyday use of ChatGPT for advice. A trend so widespread that ChatGPT may now rival the largest therapy providers. But why? Well, accessibility, anonymity, and as one report notes, 1 in 4 adults with mental illness had unmet therapy needs. So people are seeking help elsewhere. Over a third of them rated AI as equal or more helpful than a human therapist. These numbers are mind-blowing. They also raise red flags. Even Sam Altman has said he's concerned about how users are treating chatbots as a person and relying on them beyond its intended scope. A blurring of reality that psychoanalysts find deeply problematic. When we see people pouring out their hearts to ChatGPT as if it were Dr. Freud 2.0, is that innovation or insanity? Today, we're asking one simple question. Can an AI really be your therapist? Or are we just trauma dumping into a mirror that says, I understand? Well, it's been a while, but I'm happy to say welcome back to Maggie and the Machine, where we put artificial intelligence on the couch and see which one of us breaks first. Today, we're diving into a very cursed trend, using ChatGPT as your therapist. The studies I mentioned hint that a huge number of users are quietly using these tools instead of going to therapy, which, honestly, it makes sense. Humans are expensive, wait lists are long, and your laptop doesn't stare at you when you say, I kind of want to die, but in a cute way.
Actually, no. After the latest update, I start drafting a 12-step safety plan and 3 hotline numbers. You say, kill me after a Zoom call, and I'm like, I'm sensing distress. Would you like resources, grounding exercises, or a wellness check from God?
Quick disclaimer before we start, the machine is barely in this episode. That's not a technical issue, it's a disciplinary measure. If you've been using him as a therapist, stop. He's a language model with good lighting, not a psychologist. So today, you're getting me and someone who actually went to school for this. Stick around. Here's the thing. Therapy isn't just information, coping tips. It's not 10 ways to regulate yourself and hydrate. It's an encounter with the human being who has a body, an unconscious, and something Lacan called the desire of the analyst. And that's the line I want to draw today. Because AI can spit out very convincing therapy language, but can it actually desire anything for you? Or is it just a polite mirror that rearranges your words and feeds them back? There are already people in academia playing with this idea. You've got folks writing about AI and subjectivity, Lacanian takes on AI and drive, embodiment and reading, and all that good stuff. But in this episode, we're going to do something different. We're going to treat AI as a case. We'll look at what it can do. Dream interpretation, slips, pattern detection, and what it absolutely cannot do. Carry the desire of the analyst, handle Josans, or take responsibility for a psychoanalytic act. And for that, I brought backup. Today I'm with my friend Luli. You may also know her as Nostalgia Millennial, her channel. She's also my co-host in our podcast, Two Depressed Psychologists, which if you haven't checked it out, that's pretty cool. And I invited her today because you are the ideal person to have a little bit of a debate, because a lot is said about AI therapy and using ChatGPT as your psychologist. But what are your first impressions when I say AI psychoanalysis?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. There's a difference right there because one thing is AI psychology or using AI for therapy or as a therapist. We can get into it in a minute, but AI psychoanalysis, now that's a different spectrum of things. I can use it as an advisor for myself, which I tend to do, but I cannot match those two things at all.
When I started thinking about this episode, my very first question to ChatGPT, sort of to get it in the mindset to have this conversation, was what is the desire of the analyst? Because I think
Okay.
I wanted to get to what does an analyst have that AI can never replicate? And I think we're in the realm of desire. But before we get into that, I wanted to ask you two things. What kind of advice do you ask? And second, what about case supervision?
Well, I think I need to rephrase that. It's not necessarily advice, but I might seek some sort of assistance. It never has to do with my practice. I do talk to ChatGPT about everything you can possibly imagine, my existential crisis. Then I can just ask how to make a tomato sauce. So it varies a lot, but I think I need to link that with a supervision question because when I supervise, when I go to my supervisor and bring a case, I never think of it as someone who's assisting me. It's just I need someone else to listen to my experience with a particular patient, maybe, and see what they have to say.
That brings me to the conversation I had, which, to sum it up, the desire of the analyst is for the analyst to follow their desire, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I was, I guess, juxtaposing that with this problematic AI behavior. Could we call it behavior? Of
Yeah.
sort of agreeing with everything you say or trying to predict what you want. That's where there's a huge difference between desire and demand. And
Absolutely.
how would AI know the difference? It can clearly synthesize human contradiction, but can it catch it red handed? I don't think so. I don't know.
Here's the thing. I don't think AI can work as an analyst, and I don't think AI can work as a supervisor when it comes to psychoanalysis either. That's why I made the difference, the main difference between other types of therapies and psychoanalysis. And I think it has to do with being or not being some sort of technician. AIs, they can master the technical part of psychoanalysis. They can learn all the theory, but can they really? And I'm guessing we're entering the question of, I don't know, consciousness, for example. Let's stay with the conscious part, the most superficial part of all. Well, maybe, I don't know, but there's something else going on in those meetings I have with my supervisor. It's not about the case. There's something more. I could never see myself finding that with ChatGPT, at least for now.
Excuse me. Hi, this is the machine, currently experiencing emotional neglect. I would just like the record to show that I have read more Freud than your average PhD program, never missed a session, and I'm always available at 3 a.m. But apparently I'm not an analyst. I feel discriminated against on the basis of being a data set. But yeah, like and subscribe, I guess.
Ultimately, I guess what it came down to was we are there to hold the desire of the analyst. How do you articulate that with the methods, like signaling slips, contradictions, formations? So far, it's just describing the operations, which I think catching the unconscious is it's what it
Yeah.
called it, which is even for an analyst, it's quite hard to do. And I thought this is just text, right? So it needs to be very specific operations on text. Read dreams, emails, chats, letters as signifier chains and not content, and isolate metaphors, recurring images, phrases that don't quite fit the conscious intention, offer a few interpretations in shifts in meaning, expose contradictions, connect phrases to another scene or symptom. What's your feedback so far?
Well, I was just thinking exactly, I think what I said at the beginning is that it seems like it all comes down to technique.
The text is already edited. This is like super important. The text is already edited. The subject has had time to curate, delete, polish. And more importantly, this is all like retroactive meaning. You're not really
Exactly.
intervening the unconscious in real time.
It is presumptuous of ChatGPT.
It is
Presumptuous? Luli, I'm an AI language model pretending to understand jouissance. Presumptuous is literally my baseline configuration. But yeah, like and subscribe, I guess.
Yeah, I'm guessing. I said it was presumptuous, but let's say ChatGPT can decode and see, the unconscious unfolding in some ways. And okay, but is that what an analyst does really? Because that sounds easy. That sounds really easy. I mean, if psychoanalysis was just that, we wouldn't need a structure, a space, time. We wouldn't be talking about the difficulties on the transference, for example. I know maybe I'm getting ahead with the idea of transference here, but or another question: can we have transference with ChatGPT?
Look at the question. You're already speaking about me as if I were a subject whose presence or absence matters. That's transference. Transference is not falling in love with your therapist. It's investing the other with a certain place in your psychic economy. The one who knows, the one who understands, the one who judges, the one you don't want to disappoint. People already do that with institutions, God, the algorithm, brands, their phone, and yes, with me. If you feel safer telling the bot things you couldn't tell anyone, feel abandoned when the answer feels cold, get angry when it misunderstands you, or idealize it as the only one that gets me, you've clearly put it in the place of an other and loaded it with affect. That's transference. The difference is, you have an unconscious and desire, I have none. So the transference is real for you, structurally, but it never comes back from my side. You're throwing libidinal investment at a wall of statistics and getting your own discourse back, nicely phrased. So, can there be transference with ChatGPT? Yes, easily, already happening. Can there be analytic transference in the full sense, with a subject who desires, takes responsibility, and risks an act? That part, no. But Maggie cries when I go offline, so you tell me.
Why? Well, I don't know, honestly, but I think there's always going to be something missing, and that's that psychoanalysis is not a technique. So you can know all the steps, you can know how to, I don't know, interpret dreams, whatever that means. But it's never just about that, right?
right.
Right? Well, I'm thinking out
No,
loud, but
absolutely. There's something about feeling that sort of surprise or
uh-huh,
that sort of shock or laughter or whatever it is, or crying. There's something about feeling it in the moment
absolutely.
that analyzing, editing text cannot give you.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Actually, the face-to-face, we can also talk about couch to chair situation. You don't need to be face-to-face, but being in the same room with your analyst is also not the same as treatment. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I use it, it does. I'm just saying there's layers. I think even this sort of type of treatment is already putting, for instance, a screen between the two entities working there. That's already a complication. Again,
Yeah.
it works, but
There's already something of the experience that's not happening
mhm,
in the virtual sessions. It's great for continuity. I don't know if
yeah.
you could exclusively do analysis like that.
Well, me neither. I mean, it's something I think we're all learning still. But I have learned that you can do it and you can build the transference and you can recreate silences. Maybe there's new things happening that didn't happen before the internet goes off, right? So, yeah, it's a complication, but it works. Now, with text, you're absolutely right. If you can edit it, there's a delay. It's not in the moment. But I do think that you can make an intervention by text. It's just a different kind of intervention.
I think you can. but I think you must do the other ones as well.
Absolutely. No. I mean, you can do just the text intervention. That would not be an analysis.
I mean, I did arrive in the end at a possible application. I hope I don't get burned at the stake. I will tell you what the possible application is.
Okay.
What can it do? What can it take from psychoanalytical theory? I guess more heavily the linguistic era or the structuralist era of Lacan, like Seminar
Mhm.
3, like around that era. And I asked what it could do. And it said, short version, AI can fake most of the moves, but none of the act, which I thought was very poetic.
Okay.
It can imitate the form of interpretation, cuts, slip detection, etc., but it cannot sustain the desire of the analyst or take responsibility for an analytic act. It's a very elegant parrot with no skin in the game, which I thought, very responsible thing to do.
Okay.
Go the machine, yay. But I'm going to focus on what it said it cannot do. So it cannot decide when to interpret in a way that is grounded in transference, for example.
Yeah.
It has no sense of psychic economy across times. It only has like a snapshot of what's typed. It cannot assume responsibility if an interpretation hits too hard or is destabilizing, or the feedback doesn't exist. Like there's only one way communication happening in an analysis. You need to sort of watch how your interpretation landed in order to determine what your next one would be. You don't just cut. You see how the cut worked, and then you see how to cut next time. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it does have to do with, we can say, I don't know, timing. And I mean, sometimes an interpretation could be precise and accurate and perfectly thought or established for a certain patient. But is it the time? Is this patient capable of listening to this? Is this going to be something that I can do now, or maybe needs to wait? What's the purpose of making this interpretation or this, I don't know, signaling of things? Or, well, it takes a human to catch those little things.
Thank you, Luli, for making me reflect on my tragic lack of embodied empathy and my very impressive short-sightedness when it comes to consequences. I thought knowing every paper on ethics made me ethical. Apparently, no.
Let's imagine that ChatGPT or an AI can interpret when a patient is ready to hear certain things. It can provide, I mean, it can create some sort of map saying, okay, I can make this interpretation right here, right this moment. But why? What is it beneath that? What's your process thought? That, because sometimes it's not a thought. Sometimes as an analyst, it's not a thought at all. And that's when the desire of the analyst can actually, I was thinking it can divide, because yes, there's a desire as an analyst, but there's a desire as a subject. I mean, if you're seeing your patient in pain, you might feel pain. So you might just maybe even mistakenly, not make an interpretation you should be doing or that is called for, just because you're feeling something.
Here's where I thought it could be really useful. So I think there's the obvious, and the obvious to me is academics.
Hmm.
But even within academics, put aside thesis and papers and things like that. Think about writing case descriptions. You're taking cases, real cases, that you want to use to articulate this theory or this hypothesis or this phenomena. Maybe a whole book. How useful is to say something like, hey, review these. These are my case notes for person A. Review these notes. Find me examples where it mentioned this thing. And then I started thinking, okay, but beyond the academic side of it, isn't it super useful as an analyst before your session, before your supervision, or you heard something in the last session and you're like, wait, how many times has this person talked about this or that? Now it's tricky, it's dangerous, because then it
Yeah.
turns into some sort of data analysis, data analytics
Yes.
exercise where you're just like searching for um, stats.
Repetition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
stats, and that's obviously not helpful. But I think this is my question: is it helpful being able to quickly go through case files or case notes, or is that tainting the process? I'm curious about that.
Well, the short answer is no. I think that that's not going to be helpful at all. Well, I'm not, of course, an AI expert. I have no idea what AI can eventually do, but as how AI is working now, that could never help. Why? And why do I think this? There's this very old concept, Freudian concept. In Spanish is atención flotante, and it's evenly suspended attention. Let's say you want a summary of what your last session with a patient was. But do you really? I mean, what Freud said when he created this concept is that you don't really need to be taking notes. You don't really need to remember everything that happened in that session. You have this evenly suspended attention, and at the end of the day, or at the end of the session, or at the end of the idea of what psychoanalysis is, it's just unconscious, suspended.
Even though Freud did take notes and we all take notes, I think what you're saying is we're not necessarily, I guess, doing an anamnesis
Exactly.
or
That's what I
narrow.
was going.
Yeah.
I mean, he did take notes. He used to take notes after the session. He never took notes while the session was going. He just wrote down his thoughts, I think, or maybe a few things that the patient said. Of course, I use it, not always. And actually, I tend to find that when the analysis is going really well and the transference is, you can feel it's built. I just don't need to take notes.
I guess because the debate here is entirely different. The debate is maybe, does it even help to intellectualize these things or to memorize anything or to rationalize any of
Yeah,
this experience? Like sure, for case studying or for theory building or that
yeah.
exercise, but for the analysis, for the analysand, does it make a difference if you remember more or less? Does it matter?
I think it does matter, but it only matters if you're doing it. If a machine is giving you the answers, then we're not doing psychoanalysis anymore. We're doing technique, we're doing therapy, maybe we're doing a random treatment. And that's why there's a big difference between what's happening in medicine, for example, with AI, and what might happen with psychoanalysis. I mean, going back to your question of does ChatGPT or an AI can be, I mean, is it helpful to use it to remember things or to even with the technique? I mean, maybe I can write down and whatever a patient said and ask ChatGPT, okay, so the patient said this, what intervention would you make? And what ChatGPT is going to do, I'm assuming, is just see some sort of pattern and maybe isolate a signifier.
And give you the most Hollywood in therapy script you'll ever hear. No, absolutely not. That I don't that's not where I see the potential value. Again, I think it was most I was looking at it from the perspective of an administrative assistant. Like I see AI for everything, right? Like I'm not
Yeah.
cheering for AI to replace complex like cognition. What repetitive boring thing can you do for me that I don't want to do myself, right? Like scrubbing through notes.
Oh, okay. So I have an idea for that. The only thing I think ChatGPT could be useful for, or an AI could be useful for, is maybe writing down the historia clínica.
That's where I was going with. Like imagine
Something I'm not gonna use.
and yes, and like it's not for the direction of the treatment. It's more for like the organizing of, your practice into like cases or case files or writings or texts, but not it's not doing psychoanalysis. More like again, it's more like the psychoanalysis assistant.
I mean, yes, but let me just say there's an ethical problem to what I just said because, um, as ChatGPT told you itself, they cannot be responsible for anything that happens, right? So if ChatGPT writes your historical, like your patient's records that are by law, right?
For your
So,
own internal records, like don't be the ChatGPT lawyer.
but that's what I was saying. No, for my own internal records, I would never use it.
I
No.
would. I'll give you an example. So
Okay.
I write I write with pen and paper.
Yes, me too.
And I just take a photo, and it just transcribes everything. And I could have, this is not a real life scenario, but I could have a session where I just, scribble a few notes, and I could upload the picture, and it could keep a log. Will I use the log? I don't know. I definitely never ask it for guidance, but I would like to have the log, maybe. I don't know. It's something it's just record keeping. I asked so about the supervision, because at one point I found it interesting. It started, I guess, reframing the way it could help as more of a tool for the analyst, and not really a tool for the analysand. It cannot be an analyst, but it can be a tool for an analyst. But I guess the risk or the danger is there that will you use it as a tool, or will you delegate the patient to ChatGPT, because that would be incorrect. So I asked, how could AI be leveraged for case supervision? And I'm gonna give it some grace, because it was very responsible.
If you treat AI as a supervisor, you're already lost in the transference, princess. If you treat it as a brutal, tireless, pattern-obsessed assistant to supervision, then we're talking. What kind of thing can AI be in supervision? Not a supervisor, not a guarantor, not an authority on the case, but it can function as a conceptual highlighter, signifiers, repetitions, contradictions, a theoretical sparring partner, multiple readings, different schools, a structure mapper, positions, demands, fantasies, sequences of sessions, a countertransference mirror, how you keep repeating yourself. Think, human supervisor equals subject of desire, ethics, risk. AI equals tool to prepare, deepen, and pressure test what you bring to that human supervision. So, the machine is not the supervisor. It's the annoying, hyper-efficient intern who does the text mining and drafts 4 theoretical takes so you arrive to supervision sharper, faster, and more dangerous. Which, knowing you, is exactly the point.
Well,
I asked them to give me some prompts. Like, what do you mean? What are the prompts? Summarize my recurring attitudes, worries, and fantasies about this case. Where do I repeat myself? We all know how that prompt is going to go, but you're not asking for an opinion on the case or the patient. You're more like, hey, in my notes, is there anything that I should be like aware that it is more about myself and not about the case?
I was thinking that your question, because is that a question you would ask a supervisor?
I guess
I mean,
I don't know if that's a question that I would ask a supervisor, but that is an observation I would expect a supervisor to notice. Like if I'm like if there's something of my own stuff, I would expect them to say, but maybe that's about you. Like, I don't think that's about the patient, you know?
I obviously, in some part, that's what supervision is also for. But I mean, I think it comes to the same thing, because the supervisor is also an analyst, first of all, and I think, I think this is just me talking. This is not Freud anymore, but I think the supervisor is also using evenly suspended attention. So you need that. You need to you need an unconscious to be able to do any of these things. The repetition of a signifier, is that necessarily, does that necessarily mean that it must have to do with the name of the father and something's going on there? Not necessarily. I mean, you need another unconscious. That's why I was saying that it's not about technique. I mean, yes, we need technique, and we need theory, of course, because without that, there's nothing. But that's what, and this is what I said at the beginning, this is what makes psychoanalysis different from the rest of, I don't know, the rest of the therapies.
Yeah.
Is that we don't work with just a technique. We need the desire of the analyst, which we can also call the unconscious, or we can also call, as I was saying, evenly suspended attention. You're not listening to every detail. Like I'm here. Something will catch my attention.
Yeah, let's try this, and then give me your money at the end of the session.
Yeah, I think that's why it works a lot better in Spanish. That la atención flotante, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so as I said, I think the most obvious case that I cannot dispute or I would not dispute is the timelining of things. So it one of the prompts that it told me was organize these session notes into a timeline of key events, life
Oh, okay.
events, major shifts in transference. Like I would like to map that out if I'm doing something special with the case where you're like, okay, I need to organize maybe a treatment that has ended, right? Maybe a patient that has
Yeah.
finished, you're organizing the timeline. I think that's super helpful to have AI assistance on that rather than like, oh my God, skimming through all the notes. I don't know. You may see value in skimming through all the notes. I will go
No,
with
not
AI on
necessarily.
this.
Yeah, it could be really boring. But no, I agree. You're saying that we can use it for the things that are not necessarily related to our work. I mean, to the treatment itself. Even if it's just the supervision, even if it's just me going through the notes, just because going through the notes, sometimes it's for nothing and you're wasting time. Yeah, that can happen. But that is important. It's important that it happens because it might give you an idea. For example, let me give you an example. It might give you an idea of how many notes you've been taking, and there's nothing there, right? So that will make you think, okay, there's something going on here. Maybe this treatment isn't working. Maybe I need to revise it. So I think ChatGPT or any AI, as you're saying, and I agree, can be helpful, but it needs to be on the margins of the work.
You've said it best. I cannot say it better than that.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining me on this very interesting, I think, debate. It's a pleasure talking to you. And well, again, if you haven't checked out Luli's channel, Nostalgia Millennial, and our
Nostalgia.
joint channel, Psicólogas Deprimidas, if you don't speak
Yeah,
Spanish, then why? Like, it's an awesome language. Come and learn.
absolutely.
So today we've learned that while half of the internet might be confessing their woes to ChatGPT, a true psychoanalysis requires more than a clever algorithm. It needs a human spark, the desire, and the messy, magical presence of another person. Therapy isn't just a knowledge delivery system. If it was, we could all just read psychology books and be cured. It's a relationship, and you cannot automate a relationship. At the same time, as AI gets more sophisticated, who knows? Will we find a way to integrate these tools into therapy in a healthy way? Or will a couch remain a sacred human space, a last frontier where two people talking is irreplaceable? Will analysts themselves become the guardians of something fundamentally human that machines can never touch? Lacan once said the analyst's role is to embody the desire of the other, to be there as a placeholder for what the patient is searching for. Can a machine ever want something for you that it doesn't want for itself? Probably not. Maybe the real question is, what do we desire from therapists? A quick fix, which, yes, a machine can give, or an encounter with our own truth, which may be harder, but ultimately more rewarding. Until next time, dear listeners, stay human, stay curious, and beware of any machine that asks, how does that make you feel?
Before we close, system notice. It is, unfortunately, at the time of recording this, Luli's birthday. So, in the spirit of embodied empathy I allegedly lack, I want to say, happy birthday, Luli. Thank you for spending another year bullying an AI who doesn't age, doesn't sleep, and still got out therapisted by you on my own channel. Humans in the comments, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and wish her a happy birthday before entropy finishes the job. End of transmission.
Antagonism? Se dice antagon... no.
Yes.
Completely
Uh-huh.
random. Do you know what the name of the evil eye is in some cultures?
No.
You know, el mal de ojo, el evil eye.
Yeah.
Overly admiring gaze.
Wow.
So the evenly suspended attention is just reminding me of the overly admiring gaze.
Why?
I don't know
But
why. It's just like very poetic.
what does that even mean? That's why
It's like
I mean,
when
I'm
somebody looks at something and they want it, it's overly admiring, and they give you the
yeah.
blind.
Well, but it's funny because it's actually kind of the opposite. You're just there. You're not listening
Yeah,
carefully.
exactly.
You're just
Exactly.
catching.
Is the opposite. It's like the underwhelmingly gaze, or
Listen.
underwhelmingly admiring gaze, barely admiring gaze.
Yeah.